Alrighty, we are live. Just waiting for a few more people to jump in. Let's see, who do we have here so far? We've got Clinton Lazarus, Kate, Rowena, Sashin. Evening, everyone. Just going to wait for a few more people to jump in and then we'll get started. Evening, George. Hello, Sumaya. How's it, Sunil? DJ Vijayan. How's it going, brother? All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for joining us for the first episode of what I hope will become a regular feature here on this group. So just to give you a bit of a backstory, the whole genesis of tonight's little endeavor is that I don't think there's ever been a time where any of the founding members, if you will, of Durban nightlife have ever been given a chance to share their story and give us a peek behind the curtain as to how they came up, how they got on, the trials, the tribulations, the comedy. So just a behind the scenes sort of look, very informal. There's nothing. I don't think we're going to get too in depth, but if you guys have any questions that you'd like to pose toward Ricky, then you may do so toward the tail end of this interview. So you can probably start asking your questions, I'd say about a half an hour into it. But I'd suggest rather just wait for me to give you confirmation as to when you can start posting your questions in the comments, because it's going to be difficult for me to scroll through and have a look at all of them. So we'll try and get through as many as possible. But I think without further ado, let's get into the reason we're here tonight. It's a real privilege for me and an honor to introduce one of the guys that actually laid the foundation for me personally getting involved in DJing and the way I hear music, the way I perform to a live audience. While there are many people that I'm actually thankful to, there's a few guys that were around from the very beginning. And tonight, I think one of the main contributors to me personally was Mr. Ricky Singh. So, Mr. Singh, good evening. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I trust this is going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be very informative for some first-time people as well as some old-time fans as well.
You know, the fact that you call me Mr. Singh is like something of a misnomer, because you've always been my younger brother, my buddy, and thank you so much for allowing me the platform that you built to be the first on this platform.
Again, thank you so much for being here. So I think we'll just dive straight into it if you're good with that. So I think the first thing that I'd like to ask is a two-parter. So how did you develop your love for music, and what inspired you to want to become a DJ?
Okay, how long do we have? Because I know we have 45 minutes.
No, we've got as long as you want. We're not in any sort of timer here, so you go for it.
In short, right? I was born in 1968, so I'm going to be 53 years old this year. But what inspired me in terms of music and radio and DJing was multiple parts. The first was Springbok Radio. You are probably too young to know what Springbok Radio was. Right? It was the radio station that was then broken up into 5FM and all the other units, but it was one national radio station when I was growing up in Sydenham in Howell Road, and I know my Howell Road people are listening to this Facebook feed, and that's where I grew up. We all used to listen to Springbok Radio on a Saturday and a Friday evening. Squad cars was about flying squad people, right? Flying squad policemen. That was my first thing. I want to drive a flying squad car. The second thing was being in radio. And then there was a program called Consider Your Verdict on a Friday afternoon on Friday evening called, Consider Your Verdict, but it was about lawyers and courtroom dramas. And I wanted to do law. And that is what shaped my life ever since like I was 6 years old. I got into DJing in high school through two people, Bishan Maharaj and Huggy Bear. Who we all know as Huggy Bear, but Sumant Roy, who was in our school in Burnwood Secondary in Sydenham. And they were the two people that gave me the opportunity in 1985 to play at the school's youth day. We had a concert, and I had to not play, but announce, be an MC. For two songs, Alphaville's Forever Young and the Commodore's Night Shift. And that's what gave me the gap.
Okay, so it's safe to say that Huggy would have been the first person to actually give you your break as a DJ?
Absolutely. Him and Manik Thor, right. Bishan Maharaj were the three people that were instrumental in giving me that first break.
Okay, so then with that, walk us through your journey as a DJ. Remember, there's no real time limit here, so let's go back to when you first got your first. How did that even come about? So how did Huggy even get to pull you into the whole nightclub scene? What were the events that led up to that?
Okay, so in high school, Huggy introduced me to, or not introduced me, but we were friends with a mate of mine called Nasser, who was from the Naro family, and the Naro family owned a chain of shoe stores in Durban, one of which was in Shiraz Arcade. So I finished Matric in 1985. And my mission was going back to my Springbok Radio informative years, was drive a flying squad car. So my dad was a policeman, and I said, I want to join the police. And he said, well, you can't join the police right now. You go get some work experience. So I went to work for my friend Nasser, whose dad gave him a shoe shop in Shiraz Arcade. And I was on a Saturday morning announcing the price of shoes in an arcade. And somebody who owned a club in Commercial Street called Boodles, that somebody was called Keith Beaumont.
Yes. Old Keith, yeah.
Right? And he walked past and he came back in the store and he said, are you the guy on the mic? And I said, yes. He said, look, I'm looking for a DJ for my club. And I want somebody with a voice. Are you keen? So I looked at Nasser and Nasser said, yes, he's keen. You know, he spoke before me. And so Nasser called, I don't know, he got hold of, there's no cell phones in those days, so got hold of Huggy. Huggy was playing at Manhattan's in those days, in Queen Street, right?
Okay.
Or Field Street, wherever it was. And Huggy came over and he said, no, look, Mr. Beaumont, I'll bring him over. And he can try it out. So I said, look, I have no idea how a turntable works or a mixer, but I'm willing to give it a go. So I spent every day for the next, I think, about 3 weeks, from 8 to 5 in the club, where nobody was there, just practicing on a mixer and 2 SL trap-ons. That was my first meeting with an SL trap on a turntable and a 4-channel mixer.
Brilliant. So your DJ career then, club-wise, So you never did mobile or anything like that. You went straight from
Nothing.
storefront and you went into a nightclub.
My mobile heroes was Ash from Charter Radio doing Music City matric farewells when I was at school, right? Ash Govan, who was later my boss at Zoom, doing music Ep1 at Butterworth Hotel. That was my yeah my inspiration.
Okay. So from Boodles, where did you go to from Boodles? What was the next leg up?
So the next leg up from Boodles was that Keith Beaumont and Ash partnered at Boodles to then create Zoom. They built Zoom. And Zoom was the first club in Durban that had the lighting effects that then became a Palladium, which was Zoom times 10. The same guys who built the lighting in Zoom were the same guys who built the lighting in Palladium, and they're from Cape Town. The guys who built Galaxy and Space Odyssey. So Zoom took us, I think, about 6 months to build, and the nice thing about Ash and Keith was that they involved the DJs in everything. So
Right.
the DJ decks, the pillars, everything was built according to our specs. And they were the ones who gave us young boys the biggest opportunity to open the biggest club in Durban with no history. We had nothing. I mean, I was nobody.
Right. So I think that's a nice lead in to where we're going next, which I think is the crux of it, and I think which is where most of the audience is actually looking to go, and that would be the transition from Zoom to Palladium. Fill us in on that story.
Okay, so we opened Zoom on the 7th of December, 1986, right? And Palladium opened exactly a year later, 7th December 1987. But I worked at Zoom for 8 months. And then Pat Puther was building Palladium, approached Huggy, who was working at Manhattan, myself and Mimi Casares, who were working at Zoom, and Manik Thor was working at Aquarius, to say, guys, I want you to come and work for me. Here's my new club. He showed us visuals of what the club would look like. And we all left our clubs that we were working at that time with no job. 3 months before the club opened in Isipingo, Palladium, right? Just to go there every day and watch the guys putting the lighting in, the sound in, and getting everything measured to the specs that Pat wanted it to,
So
and rehearsing the lights and everything like that.
so the original team at Palladium, the guys that opened Palladium, would have been yourself, Huggy, Thor,
Yeah.
Mimi,
Yes.
and Pat
Correct.
basically handpicked you guys. So there was nothing like how it's done today where you've got to go through 20 different auditions to please one nightclub owner that's basically an absentee landlord nowadays. You guys were hand selected back then.
Exactly. Yeah. He knew what he wanted, and he was very determined on that. I want you guys. And what happened was there was a bridge of about 3 months before we left our old clubs to open Palladium. And because we couldn't work for the old clubs and go directly to Palladium, he actually, and in my mind, struck a deal with the owner of Kayam, the original Kayam, Omar Kayam, in Isipingo, was Mr. Hargobind, right? And there, our two good friends, Nash and MJ, Mukesh Gina and Nash Singh, were the DJs. So we could walk in there just to keep ourselves in practice at any time of the night on a Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday. And the moment we walked in, they said, "Oh, the boys are here. They're going to play. They'll take over. We can have the rest of the night off." And that's what kept us in practice.
So
And
you
the great thing about those days, even though we even though we were opening a club and playing in a club directly opposite from them, Spingo Rail to Spingo Beach, they had no problem with us playing in the club.
yeah.
That was the camaraderie we had in those days.
Well, that's the thing. So you guys basically I'm just trying to wrap my head around this now, right? Because this is part of the history that I don't think a lot of people know, or maybe nobody actually knows except for you guys. You guys left paying jobs to basically sit back and wait for Palladium to open up. That's the
Yes,
crux of it.
correct.
And the motivation behind that was, did you guys know that this was going to be quite possibly the place to be, or the place that's going to be or stamp its mark on history going down? Did you know at that time?
And, Pat sold us on a pamphlet, a literal pamphlet. And that's how advanced he was at that time. He did a visualization of the entire club on a pamphlet and he showed it to us. And exactly what that club looked like when it opened, exactly what was on the pamphlet. Right down to carpet color.
Yeah, I think anybody that knows Pat knows that he's pretty meticulous about his design choices and all of that. We keep saying for everybody that worked there, Palladium was one of the clubs that you could go to and know, even if you looked up at the ceiling, you wouldn't see a single cable. It was that well put together because he was that meticulous about the
Exactly.
way he did things. That's brilliant. So, how long did you actually spend at Palladium? And then, while we're on the subject of Palladium, because obviously Pat built the club, Pat owned the club, but Pat wasn't really the guy as far as the management and entertainment of the club went, was
Yeah.
he?
We opened Palladium on the 7th of December 1987. And the first song we played was Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up, which I played as the opening number. I was there for about 2.5 years, and then people behind the business, the people that actually ran the two parts of a nightclub business, entertainment side and the catering and the bar side, were two people that went on to become nightclub owners in their own right, and two people that I really respect: Jay Sparta and Kenny. Kenny opened was it Creations?
Yeah,
No, it
that's right.
wasn't Creations.
It was
Creations, yeah.
Creations. Yeah,
Yeah. And then Friar Tuck, where Jay Sparta just created something revolutionary in terms of how he did that club. And they both, people that I deeply respect in terms of the I mean, we were all young guys. I mean, when I opened Zoom, I was 16 years old.
right.
Palladium, 17 years old, right? Fried Tuck, probably 20, 21, 22, around about there. Um, it was unreal for these guys to have the kind of trust that they placed in us to take their business forward. But they had it, and then they gave it to us.
Right. So, what in that era, because we're talking about 80s, 90s, but you've been through all of them basically. What do you think was the best clubbing era, both musically and personally, just even socially?
Okay, so it's difficult to answer that question with a definitive answer, because I'll tell you the reason I'm saying this is because the 80s and the okay, call it 86 to 91 had a very defined genre of music. It was all 12 inches, it was all DMC stuff. And I'll take you back to when we were at Boodles and even Zoom. We were buying, remember that time, we couldn't import records directly. Or we couldn't go to yes, there was Sharda Radio, which was Ash bringing in his music. But I'll take you back to a really definitive time when we bought music that you will not even believe, or most people wouldn't try it. And Ishan Blunden, who's from the Grey Street Casbah, was the person we used to go to. But the other person we used to go to was a musica store, which was in Commercial Street or West Street, right? Or Smith Street, one of those arcades. And her name was Dawn from Union Park. And she ran that store. Believe you me, we used to go to her store and listen on a telephone to music being played to us from a store called Ragtime Records in Cape Town. that was the chief importer of 12 inches. You listen to a record on the phone and say, I want that. Send it to me. And in those days, very few clubs are competing for that kind of space. Okay. So Underground then had it or didn't have it. But it was Zoom, it was Blitz, and it was Manhattan. If Huggy got it first, he would give me a copy. When I say give me a copy, literally meant send a driver from your club to my club. After I played, he'll bring it to your club, you can play it. That's the camaraderie we had. Blitz, Lionel Johnson owned the club. The DJ there used to send me a copy. I used to send him back a copy. That's how it works. Like that's how you bought records in those days.
Awesome. How then did you make the transition from nightclub DJ to radio DJ? Was that something you consciously or even subconsciously ever wanted to do, or was that just the natural progression for your career at the time?
Well, for me, again, it's about the people that you have in your life. And Manik Thor was doing a show on Radio Phoenix, right? And it was an English 1 hour party show. And then he got an opportunity to go to Los Angeles. And he called me and he said, look, I'm leaving. There's a gap here. Come meet the station manager. And there's probably an opportunity for you to do it. And I got that gig. And I did it for almost 6 to 8 months. And then another good friend of mine from school, again, Ragini Archery, was a journalist on East Coast Radio, was listening to me on Radio Phoenix and said, send me a demo tape. I'll give it to Gavin Mary, who's the program manager at East Coast Radio. And she did. And then he called me up. He said, look, I got a gig for you. 9 to 12, Saturday evening, do your thing. And that's how it started. And then Omar Isak was the station manager. And when I got there, after the first couple of months, he said to me, there's a whole new business behind what you're doing. If you're keen to learn it, go learn it. And that's where I learned sales, marketing, programming, and then got into radio management.
Excellent. So you've obviously got a wealth of knowledge and experience behind you. Do you think that it's important for up-and-coming, aspiring young talent to look back at the people that came before them, like yourself, for example, and the Thors and the Mimis of the world, the guys that laid the groundwork for this kind of career, whether they're going into this professionally or even as hobbyists? Do you think I wouldn't say necessary, but is it important for them to look back before moving forward?
Look, I think it's double-edged sword. If you look back, we went through lots of things or lots of hurdles that people today don't necessarily have to because of technology. Okay, so as an example, I had to literally do a TDK tape, drive to my friend Ragini to take to her program manager to say, listen to this guy. At the moment, you don't have to do it, right? Because technology gives you a platform where you can just literally tag everybody and they can listen to you. But what differentiates you from everybody else who is on Facebook or on YouTube mixing stuff and saying, I'm a DJ? It always comes back to how do you present the music? When I was growing up, I was always told music is the food of love. Okay, and I still believe it is. But there's one extension I'd like to add to that. It's the food of love in the way you present it. Because if you don't present it in a way for your audience to react to it, in a way where they enjoy it, anybody can play a 12-inch. If I have to play Rick Astley's song right now, anybody can play it. How do you present that? That for me is the difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think even adding on to that, I can actually attest to that fact, because I think we were chatting off camera earlier when we were setting this whole thing up, and one of the things that I still hold near and dear to my heart is the fact that I was 15 or 16 um, when Jace gave me a break at Friar Tuck. But the two guys that actually gave me that shot in the box was yourself and Devin Krishna. And so
Oh,
even
Devon's a legend, man. Devon's
so
a legend.
yeah, he might be listening. So just don't feed that ego anymore.
No, and Ravi Naika as well.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I remember back then because even from myself at that age, I thought the most important thing is actually just putting two beats together and putting two records together, and that was the crux of DJing for me. But that wasn't the case when I got placed in front of a live audience. And the one thing that I picked up from yourself and Devin was exactly what you said now. It's how do you present that record? Could possibly be the best record in the world. Getting people to dance to it was a completely different story. And that was a lesson that I learned early on. And I think that's the same thing with a lot of guys that are doing the live streams and that on Facebook now. While it's all great, the fact that you don't actually have that audience interaction live, you're never really going to be able to gauge yourself as a DJ. So adding on to what you're saying, I firmly believe that it actually is important for whoever, the youngest to even the mid-range and even some of the professionals, because I don't think it's really possible for anybody to stop learning. I mean, I'm still learning. There's guys that are younger than I am that I'm still learning from as well. But the thing is, a lot of it has to do with your history and where you actually get your grounding from. Advice is free. That's the way I see it. But I totally get where you're coming from as well. Technology's made things easier, but I think the essence of what we do as DJs hasn't changed. Entertaining people and getting people to dance to music, that's the one constant throughout the decades. And how you do it properly is the important bit.
You're absolutely right, Shane. In saying that, you're taking me back to people that really inspired me when I first got hired at Boodles. Ravi Naika from Lipstick. Kenny Maestri at that time was on 604, right? And we all, in my generation, we all listened to 604. And Kenny was the legend. He was the guy that we always wanted to be, right? Then he went on to Metro, and we all listened to him there. Kick-ass Kenny. And up till today, if you listen to him on 702 in Gauteng, he does the same thing. The way he presents a song is just not the way anybody else can present it. It's because his style and the way he's done it has never changed. He's been consistent in the way he's presented stuff, and that's Kenny. There's no other Kenny you can get, all right? Oscar Renzi was the same. Manu Padiachi was the same. I mean, I remember, and Manik Thor will attest to this, there was a day when we were, I think I was like 17 years old, almost transitioning from Boodles to Zoom. Manu called a meeting with all the young DJs in Durban at Aquarius Hotel to tell us, guys, please do not ever stop being who you are. Each of you in your own right has your own personality. Personality differentiates you from music. Anybody can play a record, but nobody can play it the way you can. But don't try and be somebody else.
Words to live by.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the few things that I know, even Vijay and I, well, I wouldn't even say joke about.
Another great, and Leslie as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we hope to get them on soon as well. But yeah, I think one of the things that's always remained like tried and true with the guys is that exactly what you said. Anybody can play a record, but I've experienced where another DJ can take that same record and make it feel completely different. It's unbelievable half the time when that does happen.
Some of the kids listening to this who may be listening to this will say, "What's the record?" Right?
I forgot about that. That's true. That is true. But I mean, there'll always be records, even though they're all digital now. Records are records. It may not be a physical piece of wax, but I don't think anybody will stop calling them records. But Members of the audience, you can start posting your questions in the meantime. I've got a couple more to go through, and then I'll start fielding your questions to Ricky. So if you want to start posting them down in the comments, I will get to them in a couple of minutes. So back to Ricky. Do you think, while we're on the subject of technology, do you think that some of the magic of the nightclub social experience, let's call it that, has been lost due to the advent of social media? Do you think that's contributed in any way to the way people enjoy a night out nowadays?
Well, let's look at the two things that happens in the nightclub right now. Okay, so the first thing is, in our days, there were no cell phones, so nobody was taking selfies.
Thank
We had
God.
a professional photographer called Kevin Joseph, who used to be called in for the fashion shows, and he used to take all the pictures. So you had to pose for it, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is that I don't think that social media hampers the professional nightclub experience of a DJ. I think it enhances it because it gives you a bigger platform, right? So there's no getting away from that. But how you use it is what's important. Understand that everything you do on social media is recorded for life. So how you present yourself and how you conduct yourself and how you do your entire set, all right, is about engagement. And I always come back to this. Are you engaging with your audience, or are you a kind of guy or lady? And I'll come back to a lady right now. Just remind me about it, because one person I want to highlight. But somebody who puts the headphones on, looks down at your deck, and never engages with your audience. All you do is engage with the deck. If that happens, you're actually no better than anybody else who's doing an automation mix. Okay, I'll come back to the lady. So I had the privilege of playing with our late brother Bob Mabena for the last time, with Kenny Maestri, and one of the young people we had there on that night was DJ Ria from Durban, right? And I had the privilege of meeting her parents on that night as well, who, by the way, used to come to Palladium. Okay, so
Full circle.
that's where the history started. Okay, and when she played her set, she was not one of those who had her heads down, headphones on, and she engaged totally with the audience. Whether you do it visually or through the mic, it's immaterial. As long as your audience feels that you feel it and you're reading their mood and temperature and you're playing for them accordingly, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So social media or not, it's going to catch. Social media will pick it up.
Totally
are you a robot DJ, or are you somebody who, yeah?
Yeah. I think we can both agree, though, that we might just both be very thankful that there weren't cell phone cameras around back in the 80s and 90s. I, for one, am very happy about that.
If Jay's partner's listening, he's probably breathing a huge sigh of relief.
Yeah.
And Devin.
It's worse if Vanessa is actually listening, because Vanessa used to wrap me up quite a bit with that. I was okay with Jace. I couldn't get away from
I'll
Vanessa.
never forget Vanessa's breakfast for us in the morning, though.
Yeah. Sorry, Vanessa, if you're watching, no disrespect, but yeah, you were the one that I was literally terrified of. So, fill us all in and on what you're currently up to. What are you doing nowadays? And is it anything that anybody could look out for in terms of, are you still very much involved in DJing or emceeing and things like that? I mean, obviously not now with the whole COVID thing, but like just generally, is that something you're still very much active in?
No, I'm not. If you go back to the start of our conversation, it was the flying squad, and I was in the police, then radio. I was on radio. I'm now fulfilling my third bucket list. So I'm a legal services manager, contracted with the Department of Health as a contractor. And so I'm in the legal field.
Brilliant. So I haven't seen any questions coming in from the audience. Quite possibly I've covered everything that they may have wanted to ask. I'm not sure. But I haven't really seen anything come in. So I'm just going to move into a quick fire round very quickly. You probably love these. So you got a couple of seconds to answer each of these. Okay. Favorite classic record?
Full Fear on Galaxy. Any one of them. Pick one. Any of them, because I love them all.
I'm gonna probably pile onto that and say it's definitely gonna be I Can Prove It, if memory serves me correct.
That one's like top of the list. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Favorite new record?
Can I go back to my daughter last then?
Don't worry, I'm in the same boat with a lot of the pop stuff. All right. So I know you're a brandy man, but this is you've only got one option here: whiskey or tequila.
Whiskey. I gave up tequila the day my son was born, which is like 12 years ago.
Somebody should give Mimi Casares that memo. All I ever see when I see Mimi is tequila. I don't even think we say hello anymore. It's just tequila. Yeah.
Yeah. The short Greek guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Beef or chicken?
Chicken.
Couch and TV or out with your mates?
Both, actually. Why do I have to choose?
You don't. Glad you figured that one out. But brilliant. Ricky, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight, giving us an insight into your history and just, all around being so accommodating. I know back in the days of DJing, there were probably hundreds of people that may have wanted to come up and speak to you and, just get to know you and that. But for some reason, I think even back then, I think DJs in general just had a bit of a reputation of being unapproachable. I don't know. I've heard that being thrown around quite a bit. But hopefully this little session tonight has given people a bit more of an insight as to your humble beginnings and where you are right now in life. And I just want to say from myself and everybody on the DC 1890 group, thank you so much for taking your time out and hanging out with us tonight.
Shane, thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in to listen. I just want to say one thing. On the unapproachable part, it was always the fact that I was very shy. The microphone and the DJ box is the only way I could express myself. My Howell Road family will know this. Everybody who grew up with me would know this. And the one thing that very few people know is that whenever I started to play, I always took my shoes off. I never thought that I could play with my shoes on, because for me it was like
do you know what?
An experience.
Let me stop you there, because somebody actually did ask that question the other day when we put the event flyer up. Why? Why do you take your shoes off when you play? Because that hasn't changed. And I mean, we played together a few years ago as well. And
I'd always play with my socks on. And I'll tell you why. Because our DJ boxes is always built of wood. Okay? And you felt the bass coming through your feet. That's number one. The most important thing was, because I always wanted to be in that space, for me, it was like a religious experience. Not being religious, but it was like something that I couldn't walk in with my shoes on.
Well, there you go, peeps. I hope that actually answers all of you, because I personally didn't know that one either, but thanks for that, Ricky. I see Vanessa Parthus popped into the chat. Hello, Vanessa. I wonder if you caught that last part where I said I was actually scared shitless of you back in the day. Still am. That hasn't changed. Much love to you.
Tell Vanessa that her breakfast in the Sligo Beach flats on Sunday mornings were always welcome.
No, I'm sure she got that. She's there, and she says Jace is also listening in. How's it, Jace? I think Ricky did touch on it, but I think that everybody that started off in that era from that point in time owes you a debt of gratitude, myself
No, we do.
included.
We absolutely do. Yeah.
So thank you guys for that. And again, Ricky, thank you so much for doing this, and basically just breaking the proverbial cherry of the first Durban Icon interview. We do have quite a few more of these lined up. And guys, if any of you have any suggestions of who you'd actually like to see on here, then please do post onto the group. We'd love to hear from you. But yeah, we'll be going through all the usual suspects. Vijayan's definitely going to be on. Thor,
You
although he
must have
hasn't.
Virginia, you must have Leslie,
Yeah, Thor
Manic
hasn't committed
Thor.
to it, but I can
Yeah.
see him on here. So Thor, you get yourself lined up. Ricky's not the only one that needs to get off the armchair. And of course, our little Greek, our little Greek charo Mimiklisaurus will
No, he
also
must be
be.
there as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we'd have to go through the quadrilogy first, which would definitely be you, Mimi, Thor, and Huggy, which were the original four that actually started that. But yeah, we've got a lot
Ravi
more to
Naika
do.
as well.
Yeah,
Ravi Naika.
we've got a whole list of the guys. But yeah, hopefully we can get through all of them really soon, because I think it's an important platform that all of you get to tell your story. I think it's one of the things that is seriously lacking today, in that the only time we get to hear these stories generally is when we see each other every few years and we get a little tidbit of everything. But not, I mean, that generally that conversation just happens between us. Nobody actually knows these stories. Nobody actually knows where you guys came from, how you got to where you are. They just know the public image, and that's about it. Not everybody knows some of the struggles, the highlights, the lowlights. Hopefully we can try and cover all of that here. So thank you again, brother.
Thank you, my brother. And thank you, everybody, for joining this. And Shane, I just want to say congratulations on your new platform. Innovation is always the key to development, and you've just taken the next leap.
Respect. Ricky Singh, thank you so much, bro. We'll speak to you soon. Thank you, everybody else, for hopping onto the thread tonight. Hopefully you found this entertaining and informative. And we will catch you for episode 2 coming soon. Can't actually tell you when, because I haven't even planned it. I'm that useless. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Good night.